It's slasher search time, everybody. With student body, high school student Jane Shipley seeks to mend her splintering relationship with childhood best friend Merritt and fit in with her rebellious peers. When Jane's math teacher oversteps his bounds, an apathetic high school administration forces Jane and Merritt to take matters into their own hands, driving their relationship into further turmoil and inciting deadly consequences. Written and directed by Leanne Kerr, starring Christian Carmajo, Monse Hernandez, and Cheyenne Haynes. Man, did I pronounce a couple of those weird. Slasher search. I'm all over the place right now. This is a movie. Well, we've done this before. I break it down into 5 categories and I rank it. We took last month off because I could not find any slashers. This one, though, actually I think came out on VOD last month. So we're going to talk about this. Also stars Kevin Smith's daughter, Harley Quinn Smith, in this. She plays a kind of a side role. She's good in it. All the kids are good in it. But let's get to why we're here. The slasher search. And spoiler warning, I am going to be spoiling pretty much this entire movie. So if you do not want spoilers for this movie, turn back now. First category is backstory. So he's a teacher at the school and he's wearing boring brown teacher clothes. We don't really get a full backstory here. We get allusions to his backstory through his motive, but that's kind of filling in the blanks by the viewer, and it's not necessarily in the text of the movie. He's just kind of your stereotypical stuffy hard-ass teacher, but he's also a creep and an asshole as well. So there's also a whodunit that feels kind of half-hearted in this movie. It doesn't really work and is only there to give it the feel of like those 90s slashers that work as whodunits. This isn't great stuff. The backstory, it's pretty straightforward, but I don't hate the killer. I don't hate a killer teacher. So I'm going to go 4.5. I'll give it a score of 4.5 on backstory. Motive. So the motive here is she's kind of the teacher's pet at first. And his motive, the killer teacher's motive, is to kind of get her to realize that her friends are beneath her and holding her back. So think like a superhero villain, like a Batman villain, without spoiling too much about a certain Batman movie. There's one Batman villain in particular I'm thinking of here. He's kind of like that. So this is, of course, kind of ridiculous, but I didn't hate it. It's extremely convoluted, but it's also it's unique in that way that he's got this master plan. I like it a little more when it's just kind of just a slasher killing people for their own reasons, whether it just be randomness or because they need to hit a certain number. I will also say this movie tries, though. He says it tries to be about something. He says she is special and she is meant to be special. He says he had taught her how to become a woman. I think the sexual themes, though, are kind of the weakest part of this movie. It is trying to be how the patriarchy shapes and guides women and forms them in their own visions of how they want women to be and how they think people should be. I don't think it works completely. I do like that it tries. I'm going to give it a 6 for motive. Appearance. So he's the school mascot in this. He's dressed like the school mascot in this, which is a good thing and bad thing. The good is that he's kind of funny looking. He looks like a mascot killing people. It's irreverent and funny. I liked it. He also looks kind of like Purdue Pete. If you've seen the Purdue mascot, Purdue Pete, a little bit, complete with a sledgehammer, no less, but he doesn't have a hard hat like the Purdue mascot, Purdue Pete. He also looks like something you would see on Pete and Pete, the TV show Pete and Pete, a very Pete-inspired killer. On the other hand, the name Pete. On the other hand, though, this movie is harkening back to those 90s slashers a lot, and I don't think the appearance works in that way. Those slashers, I guess the Scream mask you could say is a bit silly, but it wasn't like a big mascot head. This harkens back to little Michael Myers running around in Rob Zombie's Halloween. So I will go with a 6.5 here, so we can get to an even number, basically. And he's funny looking. The look is unique and funny. Victims. All right, some will call these people annoying high school kids. I thought they had a little more depth than I was expecting. They're not just stock characters. There's probably too much depth, to be honest. I was getting a little antsy about halfway through the movie when we were still dealing with these kids' interpersonal relationships. But on the other hand, that's slasher movie pacing sometimes. Sometimes the pacing is not great. I didn't love a certain twist that happens with Jane towards the end. I do like that the killer's motive ties directly into that twist and directly into her. I like the kids. I like the performances. So I will go with a 7 for kids, and because I like the actors and I like the movie's attempts at depth. So we're gonna go a 7 for kids. Kills. This is the weakest aspect of the movie, and honestly, it hurts the movie. He sticks with one weapon, which is a sledgehammer, and it's a pretty light kill count as well. I don't mind the single weapon here, honestly, and the sledgehammer is pretty unique weapon for a slasher, but he only gets 3 kills total. 4 if you count one that is part of his plan, but you don't get credit for someone else doing your work. And a teacher should know that. That's cheating. The first kill is of a shaggy haired kid. It's a sledgehammer to the back of the head. Most of it is blunt sledgehammer trauma. There's some good blood splatter. I will say that in this, but that mainly there's only a couple kills. I'm going to go 4 kills. So there we go. Let's add these totals up for Slasher Search. He probably has a name in this, but Mr. Ansbach is the character's name in the movie. So we'll call him that. 4.5 for backstory, 6 for motive, 6.5 for appearance, 7 for victims, 4 for kills, giving the killer from student body, Mr. Ansbach, a total of 28. I think that puts him not in first. I don't have my Excel document. I'll go through this at another time. But he's got 28. So he's not going to win Slasher Search this year, but I think he's towards the top. I think the Jack in the Box is leading the way, if I recall correctly, as he should. How about the movie? It's all right. I've highlighted the positives and negatives already, I think, when I went through that. I want to say this because I think it's relevant here, and it's also relevant, especially when it comes to this slasher subgenre. I think sometimes we look back at a lot of these movies through rose-colored glasses. I've seen a lot of reviews compare this negatively to slasher movies from the past that quite honestly are not that good. This is similar, I think, to the reactions to Halloween Kills and the Fetty-produced Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where I'm not sure what we're judging these movies against at this point. Rewatching the entire TCM series recently put this in perspective for me. Believe me, the new Netflix Texas Chainsaw Massacre is no worse than Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. And the fact that we have a Scream Factory Blu-ray means that some people look back fondly on that movie, and so someday some people will look fondly back on the Netflix TCM. I guarantee it, because I know I will be one of them. So Student Body, while it's not great, is why I watch slasher movies. And I can see some kid pointing back to it as kind of a forgotten slasher, as we are in this slasher boom now, people like to call it. And some kid now will go, you know what movie's kind of fun and we should talk about on whatever is a podcast 20 years from now. They will say, we should talk about Student Body, because it at least attempts some interesting things. If you like this and want to hear more, check out our podcast, Horror Movie Yearbook, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.